So what's it been like driving this 2025 Toyota Tundra for almost a year? After selling my old Tundra with the 5.7, I have to say, this truck has really surprised me, in a good way. Most things have been very positive, with just a couple of negatives. I'll go over those and show you some little upgrades I've done to it too. Before buying this truck, I considered all the other trucks out there. This one drives the best in my opinion, which makes sense since it is the newest platform. Ram was redesigned for 2019, GM in 2019, and the F-150 had a light redesign in 2021. So the Tundra is the most up-to-date for now, even though 2026 is its 5th year of production. When it comes to drivability, every aspect of this truck is better than the F-150, GM, and Ram, and far better than the previous generation Tundra, which I owned for almost 5 years. This truck is really easy to handle, there's very little body roll or brake dive, the brakes are responsive, and the ride is also excellent. All the new half-ton trucks do drive very well, but the Ram and GMs in particular just have an older feel with more body roll, nosedive, looser steering, and things like that. The only thing the Tundra doesn't offer is automatic 4-wheel drive, which could be a deal breaker if you're always driving in the snow. Like many people, I was very hesitant to switch to a turbo V6. The performance of this engine performs better than the V8 in just about every way. It's such a torquey engine with max torque at 2400 RPM, which no V8 can even come close to, which makes it so responsive when accelerating into traffic. Even though the Ram Hurricane HO has 540 horsepower and 521 pound-feet of torque, the Tundra is still more responsive in everyday driving, but the Ram is faster 0 to 60. This is the regular iForce non-hybrid, not the iForce Max, which I decided not to get. The instant torque with the hybrid is really nice, but with the added weight, you really don't get that much of a performance benefit. You lose the rear seat storage, and something no one ever mentions, the engine is always turning on and off. And yeah, the starting and stopping is smooth and not super noticeable, but you still notice it, and it just drives me crazy when it's turning on and off repeatedly in parking lots, drive-thrus, and at low speeds. The 10-speed transmission is extremely smooth and does a really nice job optimizing power. The only real downside to this engine, other than the sound and reliability problems they've had, is that it's not the smoothest when it's idling in drive at a stop sign or a light. You can definitely feel it idling with the AC on. Towing with this powertrain is practically effortless. There's plenty of torque, and it easily gets trailers up to highway speed. Even at 70 miles an hour, it keeps up without straining, staying at low RPMs so you barely notice it's working. It really does pull like a diesel, which is what Toyota was going for when they tuned the engine. Most people don't know this, but the non-hybrid actually tows better than the iForce Max hybrid. The hybrid only delivers short bursts of power because the battery has a limited capacity, and you're always carrying around about 10% more weight. It's like having 3 extra adults in the truck. Not only does the non-hybrid have a higher towing capacity, but it also handles long, steep inclines better. The back does sag quite a bit with weight in the bed or on the tongue, and that's one of the trade-offs of the more comfortable ride. This one doesn't have the AVS or active variable suspension with the airbags in the rear, which I found stiffens the ride even on the softest setting, because they're really just designed to reduce the sag when towing. If you tow with a lot of tongue weight often or load the bed up, that's an option you're going to want to consider. The gas mileage is actually pretty good for what it is. Around town, I usually average about 18 to 19 miles per gallon per tank, and that's with plenty of stop-and-go traffic, idling at lights, and short trips. On the highway, I've managed to get as high as 23 when conditions are ideal. For mixed driving, like what you'd see on a road trip with a mix of city and highway, it typically settles around 20 to 21 miles per gallon. That's all in warm weather though. In colder months, especially if you're doing a lot of short drives where the engine doesn't have time to fully warm up, you can expect noticeably worse mileage. This is also without using the auto stop-start system. I don't turn it off, but when you stop, it doesn't immediately turn the truck off. A message pops up on the screen saying if you press harder on the brake, it'll turn off. That's really so much better than having to press the auto stop-start button every time you drive. The technology and features in this truck are best in class. It has just about everything you'd expect in a high-end SUV. Panoramic view monitor, heated and cooled rear seats, rear sunshades, panoramic moonroof, power tailgate, and the rear window that rolls down. Most other trucks are missing at least a few of those. The leather is extremely soft, the front seats are massaging, the steering wheel is heated with power tilt and telescoping adjustment, the wipers are automatic, and it comes with every safety feature available. That's why pickup trucks sell so well nowadays. You get all the luxuries you can get in a nice SUV, but instead of a third row, you get the utility of a bed on the back. The only downside of the interior is the rear floor, which has a pretty big hump in the middle, but you do get a nice storage compartment under the rear seat. On the hybrid, that spot is occupied by the battery. I turned off the engine sound enhancement that pumps the V8 sound into the truck, which the models with the JBL stereo have. The interior is really quiet, and the engine sounds pretty throaty for a V6, so it just doesn't seem necessary. You can do this with a Carista from Amazon, which allows you to plug into the truck and change some of the settings, like seatbelt chimes. It does require a subscription, but otherwise you'd have to go to the dealer and they will probably charge you to change these settings. If you can't stand to hear about the negative, click away now. The biggest problem, if you even want to call it that, is the interior noises. This truck did have about a dozen squeaks and rattles, which seem to be a pretty common problem. Window gaskets, center console, cup holders, headliner, inside the door panel, the dashboard, seat belts, vents. Luckily, I was able to fix most of them myself, and now it's mostly silent. An occasional rattle will pop up, but nothing serious. There's only one I couldn't get rid of, and that's a rattle coming from the window assembly inside the driver's door. It seems to be a pretty common problem, with a lot of people online hearing the same noise or different noises coming from the windows with no real solution. It rattles intermittently, but I'm going to have the dealer take a look at it. As far as the other noises, I made a video of how I fixed those. The interior has nice materials, but overall just feels like the quality could be a little better. I can definitely tell where they cut back compared to the previous generation, but then there are also quite a few places where they made upgrades. There's a leather look material on the dash on higher trim levels, and the door panels look and feel nice, but they're just not as rugged as they should be. Build quality on the outside is very good. The paint is nice and even and smooth, with a nice glossy finish, which is something that can't be said for some other brands. The body panels line up nicely, the door handles feel solid. There are always people that get triggered by any negative comment, or say, it's just a truck, basically excusing any quality problems. But what good would this video be if it only talked about the positives? There are plenty of dealer walkarounds and people who are partnered with Toyota to do that. But the more people that tolerate these small issues, the worse the quality is going to get. They'll just keep jacking up the prices and keep lowering the quality. For $50,000 to $80,000, there should be no noises inside. I understand zero noise is pretty unrealistic, but to have a dozen rattles in a brand new truck for these prices is just not acceptable to me. This engine has had a little bit of a bad reputation due to the engine failures, which affected mostly the 2022 and 2023 models, with the following model years being affected but to a much lesser extent. Toyota says it's due to machining debris, but others say there's more to the story. Toyota did update the engine internals in early 2024, which seems to have helped. There have been some 2024 problems, and even a couple of 2025s, but the problems seem to be mostly ironed out, and you're always going to have a few here and there with problems. But if you compare the problems with this truck compared to the problems with other trucks and how common those are, these are pretty solid. Old Tundra solid? No, but pretty solid considering it hasn't been around for nearly as long. Plus, Toyota takes pretty good care of their customers and usually makes things right. I've added a few small things to the truck, starting with a low-profile bed cover. I wanted something that sat really close to the rails, and this one has been great so far. Between the hard cover and the locking tailgate, the bed feels pretty secure. And honestly, even the cheaper vinyl covers do a solid job of keeping your stuff protected from the elements. I had a Tiger cover for almost 5 years, and it still looked brand new. I also grabbed a leather key fob cover off Amazon just to keep the key from getting beat up. The Platinum trim comes with its own floor mats, and they're fine, but the Oedro mats have way better side coverage and the price is reasonable. They're easier to clean too, since you can just wipe or sweep them off, whereas the stock mats have a tackier surface that sand tends to cling to. And I'd like to keep a hitch cover on the receiver. It just gives the rear end a cleaner look and hides any rust that might show through. So what's good about this truck? The features, the way it drives, and pretty much everything. The bad, the interior quality, needs to be improved. Assuming they resolve what's going on with the engine, everything else is good. So if they fix those two things, there would be zero complaints. I'd highly recommend it, especially the later model years like the 2025 and 2026.